So first off, thank you guys so much for hanging with us on a Saturday and having hearts to hear about the realities of sex trafficking. I'm Allison, and I am the founder and president of Rescue America. We just recently launched Rescue Denver, and Adrian is on the call. He is our vice president of development, and so we're just super excited to talk with you guys. As I was preparing the presentation, I was very excited because you guys are such a group of influence and the eyes and the ears really for the most vulnerable population of age brackets that's being trafficked. And so we just want to take time to educate you guys to really show what's going on in the reality of sex trafficking, really what to look for, and then how you guys could actually help get involved with Rescue Denver if you feel like that's something you are called to. So we're just going to dive in. The first part of the presentation is a little it's intense because it's all true, right? And so we want to speak the truth of what's going on. But the good news is we have redemptive solutions for healing for these victims, and we're seeing so many nonprofits rise up, as well as the president and just government officials to tackle this issue. So we're going to dive right in. Well, if I can get my screen to, let's see, hold on. I may have to just do this way. Okay. So, so the problem of sex trafficking. So when you look globally overall, what is the big problem and what are the numbers to it? So 3.8 million adults and 1 million children were victims of sexual exploitation in 2016. 99% were women and girls. Now, don't let that fool you. Trafficking does happen to boys and men. A lot of it has gone undercovered. So these are the statistics that we know about, right? But we know it's a very undercover crime. And so even the statistics that we share, we believe is just the top layer of them. So the human trafficking generates about $150 billion of illegal profits worldwide. This is in America. 1 in 3 teens who are lured into prostitution within 48 hours of running away from home. So these traffickers are really, really good about spotting the kids that are more vulnerable, or just are looking for love, or just are, wanting someone to hang out with. And so they will be lured in within 48 hours. The top 3 sex trafficking types in America. So we look at what does it look like here in our own backyard compared to India or Indonesia, right? But in America, it's escort services. So that's done a lot online. There's illicit massage businesses, and then children and women being sold out of residential homes and apartments. So 99% of the victims that we have served at Rescue America are actually U.S. citizens. So that comes to a surprise for a lot of people, as many people think, oh, they come over here and they're trafficked from different countries, but it's actually U.S. domestic citizens that we are working with. And so traffickers and pimps are targeting, directly your guys' age through online social media, through schools and churches. So I'll share a story with you guys, and just so you can understand how it can happen. In Houston, one of our friends, he's become a dear friend of mine, he sent his daughter to church camp. And it's a very, very well-known church. Some of you may know the church if I say it, but she just went to church camp. She's hanging out on the beach with her friends in Alabama. She meets this new friend, and she's like, oh, I've got a new friend, right? So during her whole senior year, when she was 17, this new friend starts introducing her to this new friend group, right? And so they start, doing some drugs and maybe some drinking, and they kind of start driving a wedge between her parents and her current peer group. And so the mom and dad were like, okay, we know something's a little off, but this is, typical high school, right? And so it was one night when she was out at a party. She had turned 18, and so this is really key because legally, if the victim is 18, it's a lot harder to prove trafficking than if you're a minor. And so we'll get into that a little bit, but she was 18 and she went out to a party, and she wasn't supposed to be there. And so she Snapchatted out for a ride home, and the trafficker, she was friends with the trafficker on Snapchat because she had been introduced to him and, knew him. So he's like, I'll come pick you up. And she jumps in the car, and he hands her a bottle of water, and drugs her. And for 8 days, she was stolen and taken and sold multiple times. In 8 days, she had 3 tattoos branded on her, that is like property. And it took her parents spending over $100,000 and really setting up private investigative shop in their home to get their daughter back. And she's still in recovery. But it was 8 days that she was taken and forced to, so sold many times in those 8 days. And so that's just how, one story of how they work. A lot of times they'll be in schools. There's another story of a young gal who literally was picked up at school, went to lunch with this guy. Then they lured her into the strip club. And I'll share that a little later, but it's very, very undercover, just what feels normal in a new friend group, and you're actually being lured in. So what is the legal definition of sex trafficking? So by law, the definition is recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of an individual through the means of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of commercial sex. So to prove trafficking, the hard part is the force, fraud, or coercion, because the way the traffickers lure you in is they make you believe that you chose to go with them. So they control and manipulate you to say, just run away from home. Come on, let's go. Let's do this business deal, right? And or you're going to be a model, right? So there's all these different stories that they use, which we'll get into, to lure them in, right? And so when it's discovered and found out, a lot of times the victim doesn't even realize they're a victim. They feel like they're like, I just fell in love with this guy. I just fell in love with this person, and I'm in this situation. It's my fault, right? And so that's from a legal perspective. Now, if you're under the age of 18, because you are a minor, you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. And so traffickers and pimps know this. And so when you turn 18, what we're seeing a lot is they're grooming ages 16, 17-year-olds for a couple years, bringing them into their friend group. And then when they're 18, they convince them to run away from home and come be with them. So drugs, guns, and human trafficking are the top 3 commercial industries in the world, but human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. And this is when traffickers and pimp look at their business, right? It used to be drugs, right? Well, you can sell a drug one time over and over, but in their minds, they're like, oh, well, they look at their women and men as victims, as property. I can sell that person over and over again and make hundreds of thousands of dollars on them. And so that's where we're seeing the big shift of, it used to be drugs and now it's trafficking. So I did want to touch on with you guys a little bit about the realities of sex trafficking, because I think our culture is so paints a picture of what's okay, and it's a cover for sex trafficking. And so what many people don't understand is that pornography, prostitution, and strip clubs are all part of the sex trafficking industry. 53% entered prostitution with a pimp. Well, when they're a pimp, right, they're taking part of your money. That is being forced to sell yourself, right? And so that is sex trafficking. And then even those that entered prostitution, and women, I want to go sell myself for money, right? Over time, 80% became involved with a trafficker or pimp. So even if their motive was, I mean, we know some college girls are like, I'm just trying to make a living. I'm paying to put myself through college. I'm going to go do escort services. Well, 80% of those that entered became involved with a pimp. And then 49% said pornography was made of them while in prostitution. And so if you think about pornography, our culture has totally normalized it, right? And says, oh, this is just what you do, right? Just pornography. Well, when you look at how pornography is made, how men and women are forced into that situation, they're lured in and they're drugged to perform those acts. And that is absolutely part of sex trafficking. And then strip clubs. So what the traffickers and pimps, they have, they call the strip club. So if I'm talking to Adrienne and I'm like, yeah, what are you doing tonight? I'm going to go to the store and go buy some basically goods to sell, right? So they refer to the strip club as, they know these women that are in the strip club, if they're not already being trafficked, they're already vulnerable and dancing and showing their bodies. And so how easy is it going to be to lure them in and to buy them right? So they can then go sell them. And so I think that's really important, just for you guys and your age to really understand, because our culture has so normalized it. And you're bombarded with it because you have a phone, right? I mean, Pornhub is pushing out messages to you guys, right? And they're trying to lure you in. And so really just educating on the reality of what that really, really is and how that connects to sex trafficking. So the demographics of sex trafficking, the reality is it's in every city, every neighborhood. It does not discriminate against color, race, ethnicity, social or economic status. We've worked with women who come from very, very poor, vulnerable families to women who come from very, very wealthy, influential families. So it does not discriminate. Now, the higher risk are teens. Of course, your runaways and your foster care and your youth homes, because those children typically come from broken families, right? And so they're going to be most vulnerable, most looking for love. College students are at higher risk, and then immigrants. So, but at the end of the day, it's every gender, race, and age, and socioeconomic class. So just to give you a little overview of what does a type of controller look like. So if you're on social media and someone reaches out to you, how do you really assess like what's going on, right? So there's basically three types of controllers. You've got the gorilla pimp, and this is what happened to the girl in Houston, right? She was kidnapped through drugs, right? So she didn't willingly choose to go with him. She is actually getting a ride home. He kidnapped her, drugged her, forced her into it, right? And a lot of people think that that's the way that happens, but most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, the women that we work with either have a Romeo pimp or a CEO pimp. So the Romeo pimp is, hey baby, you look great, you're beautiful, come, I'll take you to the mall, I'll go buy you a Louis Vuitton, let's get your nails done, you're so beautiful. So it's using flattery to lure, right, this girl in. And just they think that, they make her think that she's the best thing ever, and they actually then fall in love with the trafficker or pimp and start dating them, and then they go force them to sell each other. And it's a very, very, depending on the woman, it can be a very quick or slower process of control and manipulation of saying, I mean, one of our clients said, well, yeah, I thought it was kind of weird. He told me he loved me and we were going to be together. But then when he made me start posting my pictures online of my body and to sell myself, I felt a little weird, right? And he's saying, oh, baby, come on, just make a couple bucks for us. We're going to make it. This is great. So it's a very controlling, manipulative spirit that they use to make you think like, well, if I love him, I'll just do this, right? So that's the Romeo pimp. The CEO pimp, this is the pimp that uses money and business strategies such as, modeling and record businesses to swindle a victim. So one of our dear friends in Houston, she was trafficked years ago, but what happened to her is when she was in high school, she fell in love with this guy. They were all this new group of friends. She fell in love, and he's like, come on, baby, let's go to Dallas. Let's go make a record. I promise you, we're going to come back to Houston and we're going to be with your family, but just run away with me to Dallas. And I think they'd been dating about a year. And she's like, okay, I'll go with you to Dallas, right? Well, on the premise of we're going to go do this record deal, we're going to make money, and we're going to come back to Houston. Well, she gets to Dallas and she gets thrown into a hotel room with 10 other women, and then they start doing her hair and her makeup and getting her ready to go sell herself. And so that's how quickly and easily it can happen. And they will present themselves as they love you. They will present themselves as you're the best thing that's happened to them, when they are actually trying to lure you in to actually sell you. So where does this happen, right? So specifically for teenagers, it's online. So it can be dating apps, Tinder, Grindr. It can social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, really where there's any social presence. They're on there looking for people they can lure in. And then online, there's hundreds of websites, and we'll show some data in Denver that actually that basically it's like a Craigslist, right? And women are for sale. And so people go in and buy them from online, right? And they'll meet at a home, or they'll meet at a hotel or an apartment to go sell themselves. We talked about pornography and strip clubs. It also happens on the street. So like in Denver, Colfax Street, close to downtown, that's where you'll see a lot of women walking on Colfax selling themselves. It happens at hotels. A lot of times, women will move from hotel to hotel. And so they'll be living with the trafficker or pimp, and they'll be in a hotel and they'll pick up and move. We got a call in Houston last week. There was 4 15 or 16-year-olds in a hotel. So we engage law enforcement when minors connect with us, but the pimp and trafficker found out and they moved him to the next hotel. So it's a constantly mobile thing. Then it happens at truck stops. So you'll have women go knock on truckers' doors. The pimps and traffickers will drop them off, say, okay, go make your money, right? Go work the truck stop. And then massage parlors, the spas, which you guys have probably seen. Any spas that now, not all spas are this, but if they have a darker shades and they're open late at night, typically they're selling sex out of those spas. And then homes and apartments. I mean, we've heard of children telling their parents, hey, I'm going to go study at a friend's house. And then actually they're being picked up by their boyfriend, who's the pimp, right? And they're selling her for 2 to 3 hours. And then she goes back home and she wakes up and goes to school the next morning. So it can be very, very, very undercover, where parents don't even know that this is going on with their children. So a day in the life. So what does it look like for a victim who's involved with trafficking? So again, we talked about the first part is the hair, the makeup, the nails, shopping. Really, they're making you their property, right? And so they're getting the look that's required by the controller. Then comes the physical abuse. So, I mean, anything that you can think of physically, they will do to you, from beating, drugs, choking, tattoo branding, sticking you. We've had a client that said they just put an iron right on their arm, ice bath. So anything they can do physically to control and manipulate you and scare you. And then you have the sexual abuse that comes in. And this is a lot of times they will rape or gang rape the women. And this is really called like de-souling. And so they want to numb the woman, like from this act, right, of sex, because she's going to be going over and over. And so they will gang rape her, forced prostitution, forced unprotected sex, and completely unnatural sexual acts that they will make her perform. Then there's the psychologist or sociological, the abuse, the mental abuse, dependency, threats, intimidations, blackmail. So a way that these traffickers too, if you guys have people friending you on social media that you don't know, do not accept their friend requests, because they'll say, oh, you're so beautiful, send me a picture. They'll have a picture of you, and then they'll blackmail you and say, I'm gonna send this to all of your friends unless you do X, Y, and Z. And so that's complete blackmail. And so if you guys have ever found yourself or a friend in that situation, feel free to reach out to us. We will connect with law enforcement. We had someone connect to us. This was 2 years ago in Houston, and their daughter was 15 years old, and she was being lured in on Facebook by a trafficker. We reported it to the Vice unit, and they were able to go arrest this person who was luring her in just from the Facebook posts. And so just so you know, if you guys find yourself in this situation, and we'll give you the hotline number at the end, please, please, please call us. And there is no shame and do not feel bad to be calling us, because this is what we're here for, right? And then finally, a day in the life. Most women who are in the life have to service 5 to 10 men a day. So they'll have a what they call a trap or a quota, where they have to bring in, $2,000, $3,000 a day. And we've had women, we've seen women out in Houston on the track, which I'm sure here in Denver, at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to make their quota because they haven't hit it for the day. And so they can't go home and they can't get food because they actually have to make their quota, right? So lastly, before we dive into statistics for Denver, just some warning signs for you guys, in high school and around your peer group. People you don't know, even if your friends are friends with people on social media and they're requesting your friendship, do not accept the friendship, because you don't know who that person is behind the screen. And a lot of times what they'll do is try to get your friend to accept them and a couple others. So when they request your friendship, you're like, oh, well, he knows 3 of my friends, so I'm going to accept his friendship, right? But the reality is nobody knows him. And so me personally, I won't accept anybody on Facebook that I have not met, because of that. And so it's just not worth more friends or likes on social media, because there are predators out there constantly 24/7. There was a woman who went undercover on Facebook to see how long it would take her to be picked up by a trafficker or pimp. So she created this fake profile, and I think it was in like 2 minutes that a trafficker had found her and was trying to lure her in. So it's very, very prominent on social media. If you have people asking to send you sexual pictures, don't do it. They will use it as blackmail against you, and they will, even if you think, right, like, oh, it's a friend or it's whatever, sometimes traffickers and pimps, a lot of times they'll send in what's called groomers. And so the title of a groomer, their whole job, and they get paid by the trafficker or pimp, is to friend you and to become your friend and to make you feel safe and everything so they can introduce you to the pimp. And so even if it's friends, don't send those pictures because they will blackmail you like that. If they're driving a wedge between you and your family and your friends, and we all know, I mean, I remember what it was like in high school. I was like, oh, mom and dad, I'm ready to go to college, right? But it's really important to really see, like, if one of your friends, or you feel like people are like plotting your parents against you and your peer group against you, because what they want to do is separate you from the people that are safe in your life, right? Giving you a cell phone for communication. So a lot of times they will say, oh no, here, have this cell phone, we'll just talk on this cell phone, this is special for you and me. And so, like, even as parents protecting their children, monitoring their phones, they won't be able to tell who they're communicating because they don't even know they have the phone. So like sometimes in Houston, we've heard of parents, like kids having a phone at school for 2 years in communications with this other group of friends, and they don't even know about it. Again, using charms or gifts or promise of money, a wealth, or modeling, or making a record deal, trying to lure you in. It's just, it's not good. And then really just listen to your gut. Like I think we always, internally, we have a barometer, right? And I look back to decisions I made years ago when I was your age and even older, that I knew it sounded enticing and fun, right? Because you're like, oh, well, yeah, this sounds fun. But deep down, if your gut says don't do it, don't do it, because it's probably something bad on the other end. So hopefully I didn't overwhelm you guys with the realities, but it is the realities of it. So let's dive into what does it look like in Colorado? What does it look like in our own backyard? And so we pulled law enforcement data. So this is from 2017. So it was 3 years ago. But what this data really tells us is the Rocky Mountain Innocence Loss Task Force, they focused on recovering minors. So they had 112 minors recovered in 2017. And in the Colorado Trafficking and Organized Crime and Coalition and the Department of Homeland Security, they focused on adults, and they didn't have any recoveries. But in 2017, there was 112 minors recovered, with 197 investigations. And so then if you look at the state judicial human trafficking statutes, there were 192 filed. So that really shows those were probably the accurate numbers from a law enforcement perspective. But we have to remember, with law enforcement, it's the tip of the iceberg. And so they're only getting a very, very, very small percentage of what's actually happening. And so we took a look at, there is the national hotline and the state hotline. And so these are for referrals or tips or people that think they may be victims. When you look at those hotlines together, there were 144 calls into those hotlines together. And then we also talked with the Juvenile Assessment Center in Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. And in 2018, they started screening children, problem children that came to them for red flags for trafficking. And out of 3,000 children, approximately 230 had red flags of being trafficked. So that is really what, like, the law enforcement, right, and the county agency says, but we know that there's so much more going on. So we did a little investigation ourselves, and we found all of these places in Denver. And so obviously the red are certain locations, purple are, and yellow are. But does anybody have any idea what these colors may represent?
Maybe places that are where trafficking has occurred.
Yes, you're right. So we pulled data from 2 websites. So remember, there are hundreds of websites, right? We pulled data on a Monday and a Friday. We scraped the website, and what we found in Denver alone, there's 297 massage parlors. And these are websites where people are actually advertising sex for sale. So it's not a massage envy, like come get a massage. It's actually sexual websites. Um, 17 strip clubs advertised on those websites, and then 17 sex shops. We also looked at individual escort ads. There was 216 in Denver. Now for the whole state, there was 485 massage parlors, 23 strip clubs, and 30 sex shops with 277 individual escort ads. So that really gives you a clearer picture of the depth of the issue and how it really is truly right in our own backyard. It's just very, very hidden. If you don't know what to look for, it can be very, very hidden in plain sight. So are there any questions before I jump into Rescue Denver, Rescue America, who we are and what we do? I know that's a lot of information. It's probably a little overwhelming, but if anybody has questions or thoughts they want to share right now, feel free.
Yeah, guys, so if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat. I know I've already gotten one specifically about, are there any definitive signs, like if you're out in public, how can, we who are not being trafficked kind of identify those who are?
Yeah, great question. So typically, if you see a young woman with a man and she's like not looking at you, she's looking down, she may have some tattoos, she could have physical bruises on her. A lot of times the pimps and traffickers are so controlling that they can't even make eye contact, right, with the public. A lot of times they'll be dressed very, very provocatively. So very, very low cut shirt, very short shorts or short skirt, with hair, makeup done, just really, really showing their body off.
And then we have one more. How do statistics compare, like, for Colorado with comparable states?
Great question. So actually, when we pulled data on Houston, and we compared, so it's always been said that Houston is the #1 city of trafficking, right? But there's so much data, data that isn't solidified out there, that people throw terms around and everything. And so we're like, okay, well, really, is it? And so when we compared the websites of Denver and Houston, the same websites, just a different territory, almost per capita, so the land mass size of Denver compared to Houston, it was the exact same thing. So when you looked at it from that perspective, each city has the exact same problem. And we did, Adrian, you pulled data on a lot of major cities in the US to come up with the 26,000 number.
Yep.
So some cities you'll see lower, but like Denver and Houston are really almost identical in terms of the problem.
And then one last question. With these known trafficking websites, why hasn't law enforcement done more to crack down on users and owners of these websites and try to stop this terrible trafficking epidemic that we are currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. So 2 things. One, law enforcement is honestly starting just to get trained on trafficking and how to identify it. And so the number of law enforcement that are trained compared to the problem is, I mean, like Houston has 11 undercover vice officers. And so it's like the depth of the problem compared to how many they have on staff is completely out of whack, right? They can only do what they can do. But secondly, just like anything, there is corruption in government and in our law enforcement. I mean, we had a woman call us from Atlanta, and she had to get out of Atlanta because a police officer was her trafficker or pimp. So the traffickers and pimps are really good about paying everybody off because they're making cash, no tax payment. I mean, they're making oodles of money. So they'll start paying off law enforcement. They'll start paying off people not to investigate them. And so I think it's, and not to say that everyone is, because there's some amazing, amazing law enforcement officials and government officials that are really cracking down on this. But those the two combined is why we're seeing them still operating. Any other questions before we move on?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to write them in the chat and we will ask.
Okay. So Rescue Denver, Rescue America, Rescue Denver, Rescue America, think of it as the parent company. And then we have Rescue Houston, Rescue Denver, and who knows where else we're going to be. But we, first I want to paint a picture of an anti-trafficking landscape. So many people hear about anti-trafficking, right? And then you hear about different organizations that are fighting it, but really when you look at the landscape as a whole, there are needed organizations to fight different aspects of the landscape. So this just shows a picture of kind of the chain of different areas on the anti-trafficking landscape that organizations are fighting. So some organizations just focus on community awareness. So all they do is go make the community aware this is happening, and that's their main bread and butter. Some of them are prevention and education. So that is educating parents, educating students on this issue. How do we prevent and protect the current population from this happening, right? Where Rescue Denver plays is in that gray strip right there. So we actually have a 24/7 hotline, rescue hotline, and emergency assessment program. And so we are doing direct outreach, and we have strategic partners that do that, as well as partly we do, and we'll get into those details. But getting our hotline number into the hands of victims, and then if they're ready to exit the life, we actually rescue, and then we have an emergency assessment program that we place them in before they go into their long-term aftercare home, because many of these victims are so traumatized that it takes years, 2 to 3 years of healing before they can actually start gaining job skills and actually holding down a job. So that's kind of the landscape from a if you look at a supply and demand, right, it's a supply side, but the whole other axis is demand, right? And so we know that we will always have women to rescue if the demand, if the people that are buying, right, keep buying, and we don't provide healing and solutions for them, we will always have women to rescue. And that's why it's so important educating on pornography. There's so many studies that are done that pornography is more addictive than heroin, right? And so it's so normalized. And so because of the addictive nature of pornography, what it causes people to do is to need more and more and more of it. And then all of a sudden they're going and buying women, right? And so that's how the correlation of pornography and trafficking come into play. It's really an open door into, now I've actually, to get my high, I've got to go purchase someone. So we absolutely need organizations focusing on the demand, right? And providing those healing solutions for those that are addicted, and really just educating the community on the effects of pornography. So our mission, Rescue Denver, we empower victims of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation to exit the life. So one of the terminologies, if you're being trafficked, it's called in the life, the life. We empower them to exit via 24/7 hotline and emergency assessment program. And so we'll get into some of those details of how that operates in just a bit. But our experience, so we started in 2014 in Houston. We helped 17 victims our first year. Last year, we actually helped almost 150, 149 victims. And this year, I think we're already at 78 victims. So we've already done what in one quarter what we did in the whole 2018. And so that's just really our experience. And as we've grown as an organization, we are constantly learning about the issue and what the needs are to really get the women out of the life and keep them from going back, right? So when you look at survivor reality, so when a woman is in the life, right, what is the reality of her victimization? So this was a survey that was done in 9 countries, interviewing prostitutes and sex trafficking victims. 89% desired to escape, but felt like they had no options. And so this really comes against the lie that there's so many people that say, well, a woman's in a strip club. Well, she desires to be there. Well, she wants to be there. Well, actually, what the data shows is she doesn't want to be there, but she doesn't feel like she has any other option in her life, right? 68% had PTSD, the level of combat vets. 62% were victims of child sex trafficking, and 61% were romantically involved with their trafficker. So that again goes to show the methodology, how the trafficker lures you in, is making you fall in love with them. So then we've got our process. So our process is really a 5-step process. It's respond, rescue, assess, stabilize, and place. And so we're going to go into those details of our process. But our hotline, so how does our hotline number get out into the hands of victims? So one of the ways, and we're going to talk about this, could be a volunteer opportunity for you guys, is called phone banks. And so this is just a map of Houston. We have different phone banks that are located in churches, and this is just an outbound telephone call. We provide you with the script, the phone number, everything to make to women that are stuck in the life. And you're making an outbound telephone call saying, I saw your ad online and I just want to let you know there's a way out of the life. And here's a hotline number you can call if you're ready to leave. And so that's the main way we distribute our number. Now, we also partner with hospitals. A lot of times victims are found in the ER. 88% of the time victims will see a healthcare provider while they're being trafficked. And so we educate the ER systems, and we will actually do rescues from emergency rooms. We also have law enforcement, district attorney's office, and then partner ministries that go to the streets. So like Colfax, they'll go and hand out our number on the streets. So again, our hotline, our first program is a respond and rescue. So when our hotline rings, and that if that woman is ready to come off the streets, come out of her situation, the first line of response is a volunteer. But if she's ready to leave, it passes on to our exit strategist, who's a staff member. And what they do is they locate a bed in one of our partner shelters. So we partner with shelters for bed space. So we find her a bed, and then we deploy what's called an exit team, which is a man and woman that goes and picks her up from that public location and transports her to that shelter. And so that is the whole rescue piece of our hotline. Now, if they are just looking for resources and they're not ready to exit the life, we'll give them different resources. But our primary purpose of our hotline is for those that are really wanting out of the life. Then we have our 60-day emergency assessment program. And this was created when we started really understanding the level of trauma that these victims have come through. This whole program was created to address the most common variables that cause the victims to return to the life over and over again. And so we're addressing mind, body, and spirit in this program. And so our whole goal is to help her understand that this is what happened to her, but help her to understand when she's triggered, how to manage her triggers and stabilize so she's not running back to the life over and over again. So you'll see different components there. I think I'm a little long-winded, so I'm going to move through to the next slide. But really, that 60-day program is to assess, stabilize, and place. So then we can place them into their best continued care placement. So this has long-term trafficking safe homes all across the country, from adult homes to minor homes. So again, we're the kind of the middleman, like from right out the street. Let's get you out. Let's stabilize you to get you into that best next long-term care. We have extremely phenomenal clinical results in 2019. So we started tracking the levels of PTSD, anxiety, and depression from when they enter the program to when they leave the program. And the industry, the minimally clinically important difference, the industry says if you have a 9% decrease in PTSD, that's good. We're experiencing a 62% decrease in PTSD within 60 days. 49% in anxiety and depression at 63% compared to the way lower industry averages. So we're very excited about those results. We continue to track them to make sure actually what we're doing is making an impact. And then we have our, actually I'm just gonna jump to the participant's perspective. So this is just a quote from one of our clients. She said, I was definitely a bunch of scattered pieces before. Emotionally, I was broken. Mentally, I was the toughest person ever. Spiritually, I hated God. And in my soul, I was just crushed. Also, my legs and arms would get spotted bruises all the time. They appeared in weird places. I went to doctors and there were no answers, but now they are gone too. So I've even noticed a physical response to this program. And so that just really goes to show the holistic approach of our program, but it also shows we've learned so much about trauma. Trauma is stored in our central nervous system. And so it can have physical effects on our body. So because her trauma was healed internally, her physical body had a response. So that's just a quick glimpse of what our program does. But now I'm going to have Adrian share with how you guys can actually help and become involved in our work and help solve this issue.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. And yeah, guys, there's several different opportunities to get involved and really get involved quickly. One of the great things about our mission is, anything that, whether it's financial or volunteerism, we get it, we can get you plugged in really quick and either put your donations straight to work or get you plugged in as a volunteer. So one of the things that we're doing right now, and this is new, but we have set up this giving level, and it's called a rescuer. With your $25 per month donation or a $300 single donation, yearly donation, you will provide for the immediate needs of a survivor when she exits the life. So we're talking about when people come out of the life of sex trafficking, they really don't have much more than the clothes on their back a lot of times. I mean, we send in an exit team, we pick them up, and they very seldom have anything. If they have something, it'll be like a trash bag with clothes. And so the immediate needs are things like it's basic needs, it's food, it's clothing, it's a suitcase. Allison mentioned earlier that traffickers will give them a cell phone. Well, we found it very important to get them a different cell phone right out of the gate. And so that's part of the cost. So just things like that. And it's a really, it's an affordable, tangible way to make a very, very big difference. One thing I was going to add too, right now we are seeing, even with COVID-19 going on, our hotlines are ringing and people are calling us almost daily, wanting to exit the life. And so there is as much need right now as there ever has been. Allison, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yes.
So Allison also talked about our 60-day emergency assessment program, guys. And so right now our program is in Houston, and it has the capacity to serve 8 survivors at a time. What we're trying to do right now is increase our capacity of that program to double the size, the capacity in Houston. So go from 8 to 16 slots, and then also launch the program for the Denver and Colorado area. Right now there's capacity for 0, and we're trying to get that to 8 slots. So across the board, going from 8 to 24 slots across all of Rescue America. Allison showed a slide earlier that shows the different therapies that people go through and the different legal advocacy mapping and all of that stuff. Those are costly services. And so this is our goal right now. We're trying to raise $400,000 to get those up and running. So, if you guys have any connections that you can make to us, or, know of anybody who might be interested in funding that, you can see the different breakdowns of gifts that we're looking to get there to that $400,000. But yeah, we would really, we would greatly appreciate it if you had connections that you can make to help us get there. And to fill this very, very crucial need on the emergency assessment program. Again, it's that crucial period when they're coming out of the life. So Wyatt put the giving link into the chat. So if you guys would love to, we'd love it if you got involved. Survivors need help now more than ever. So I'll kick it back to Allison to talk briefly about volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely. So frontline volunteer opportunities. So Adrian and I were just discussing, for people your age, what would be really great, and our phone bank. So this is where you just place outbound telephone calls to women that are in the life. So what we do at Rescue America is we provide you with all the infrastructure. So we actually scrape the numbers from the websites. We send you, like the group would be sent, okay, here's a spreadsheet of numbers to call. And you actually have a script and you have someone that's there. So one of our Rescue America staff would come and train and equip you how to do it, and all of that. So really it's showing up and making phone calls and just speaking a word of hope and a way out for these women. Right now, we have one that just started at Cherry Hills Community Church the end of February, and they're actually on hold right now because of COVID-19. So we're not doing outbound calls, but we really feel that'll start picking back up in June or so. And then we have 2 other churches that are looking to start phone banks. We did have a college in Houston that was doing phone banks as well. And so they were just a bunch of college students that got together and made phone calls. So if you guys are interested in doing that, we can definitely talk with you about just setting up a time. And typically groups just choose one day a week, or sorry, one day a month. So it could be like the second Friday or second Tuesday from, I don't know, 6 to 8 or 10 to noon, right? So you guys could choose what time and when you wanted to get together and do that. And the only thing you need is a computer and a cell phone. And so we have all the directions on what app to download. You don't use your phone number, so you call from a secure app, so they don't even know it's you. And just your computer for tracking the Google Doc, which we keep all the information on. So it's really, really really easy for that. So if you are individually interested in that, you can email volunteer@rescueamerica.ngo and we can get you plugged in. If you guys feel like there's a group of you that want to start a phone bank, reach out to Adrian and I, and we can connect you with Sarah, who is our mobilization manager, and she's in charge of coming out and training with you and making sure that you guys are all set. And then typically what happens is there's someone in the group that raises up as the leader. And again, that's very flexible. You can choose your own time and you can choose how many times you do it a month. Typically, most of our groups do it once a month. And then just the value of our volunteers. So when people volunteer for our organization, just kind of giving you a big picture of what it does for us. So last year we had over 11,000 hours of volunteer service. And actually when you, as a nonprofit, you can value that service on your financial statements. And so that was worth over $300,000 to the organization in 2019. Again, which makes your donor, like if you're a donor to an organization, right? So every dollar that's donated is actually 38% more efficient, or is increased by 38 cents for the organization because of the value of our volunteers and what they bring to the organization and helping operations. So that was really the gist of the presentation. Here's our information, my information and Adrian's. And actually I'm in Denver and Adrian's in Colorado Springs. And so we're here locally. If you guys have questions, want to meet, there's our information. We're so grateful to be able to talk with you guys. And really we're open to hearing your ideas and your thoughts of what are you seeing in your peer group? Are you seeing signs? Are you seeing anything? You guys really are the eyes and ears, and in the day-to-day, you're the demographic that's being targeted. And so please do share with us if you see or you sense, or you're like, hey, this is what we're seeing. We'd love to have feedback on that and just work with you guys in that way as well.
And also just to tag on one more thing, Wyatt has our contact info as well. So if you guys, you could, if you see it there, but he also has all of that. So you can relay your questions through him.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much again for doing this with us, and thank you all for coming. It's really impactful to see you guys all, not only support our CIP project, but Rescue America as well. If you have any additional questions or would like to get involved, feel free to reach out to any of us or anyone at Rescue America. The contact information, again, is right up there. But thank you guys for coming, and we hope you all have a good day.